What's up everyone, my name is Zach and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be telling you guys about all my favorite books of 2024. So something I do throughout the year, if you're new to my channel, is every month or so I have like one or two favorites, which just means it's a 6-star book. It's above 5 stars, so more than I would expect from a book and hit me in a different way than other books have. And so I did that on purpose throughout this year so that at the end of the year I could make a video telling you all about my favorite books of 2024. I have so much content planned for end of the year content. I have so much planned that I'm gonna put it in a playlist. I think there's like 10-ish videos that I have planned for end of the year content. So stay tuned for future videos. I have like a top 10 list coming because what I did was I took this long list of books and I broke it down into my top 10 favorites of the year. That was very stressful and very difficult to do, but that video will be coming out very shortly. I know some of you might be thinking, Zach, the year's not over yet. I know. And if I read a new favorite by the end of the year, I will tag it on to next year's list of new favorites. That way it gives me time to kind of wrap up the year. I also am someone who likes to kind of get an early close on things and get started on the next thing. A fresh start is very impactful and very meaningful to me. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm going to tell you guys about all my favorite books of 2024. I'm so excited to make this video. Also, something else in this video, there are a few books that I actually ended up taking off the new favorites list. When at the end of the year I reflected on all the books that I read, there were some that didn't really feel like a new favorite anymore. So I will briefly touch on those in this video as well. And then there was one book that I actually ended up adding to my new favorites list. So I did a lot of reflection to make this video and I'm very, very excited to be filming it and bringing it to you guys. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a ton. A like on the video goes a long way. And please tell me your new favorites of 2024. I would love to hear like what books people loved this year. And I bet there are some in common with mine, but also I thought about calling this video The Hill That I Will Die On, because I know that there are some books in here that I loved this year that were new releases that other people did not love as much. And I'm okay with that. I love that how different the book community is. And I'm excited to share my favorite books of 2024 with you all. And I actually think that they're in order. When I went back and made this list, I think that I actually did them in order. So these are probably going to be in the order that I read them. Because there are so many, I'm just going to give you guys like a little tagline or a little blip of why I loved the book. And then last announcement before we get started on this list is that I have been sick with like a throat and ear thing. So I'm sorry if my voice is not as strong as it typically is, or if I don't seem as I don't know. I still have a little bit of the throat problem going on, but I really wanted to make this video. So I have some water, I just ate a cough drop, and let's get started. Okay, so the first book that I want to tell you guys about that was a new favorite this year is Love Letters to a Serial Killer. This book is a satire on the true crime industry, but then also romance books. And I found the humor to be really hilarious. I found the ending to be kind of shocking, but very fun. And I really, really loved the writing. The next new favorite on this list is Patricia Wants to Cuddle. This was not a new release. This was actually a backlist book that I read this year. This is about a dating show that takes place, I think it's on like a remote island. Yeah, mysterious island in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, and it's like they go through all these tribulations and trials on this island. It's an action-packed thriller that is far from scripted, and only a few will make it to the final cut. I just wanted to remind myself what like the tagline of this book was. But what I really loved about it, again, similar to Love Letters to a Serial Killer, is that I found this book hilarious, but also very good at commenting on LGBTQ issues and also religion. I didn't expect to love this book as much as I did. I listened to it on audio and would highly recommend the audio. I just found this one to be shocking. And then also just shocking that I loved it as much as I did. I picked it up on a whim while doing landscaping this year. Yeah, and definitely a new favorite. I loved it so much. The next book on this list is Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. I loved this book. It is another island story that is a mystery, and it actually goes back and forth in time. It starts at the end of the book, and we kind of like go back and forth until the times converge. What I loved about this book was the cast of characters were very unique. It talks a lot about the health and wellness industry, rich people problems, but then also like pagan and ritualistic dark themes throughout this book. Lucy Foley is a very good whodunit writer. She gives the reader a chance to form your own thoughts and conclusions. She doesn't hold your hand throughout this book. You have to really be paying attention to catch on to the connections that she's making and how she's leading you to the next thing. Love Lucy Foley, one of my favorite authors. Okay, another shocking book that I loved, not because the book itself is shocking, but shocking that it was a new favorite, was My Heart is a Chainsaw. This is a slow burn character study about final girl culture, minority groups, and just people who don't feel seen, and how that can come out in a very entertaining, thrilling, gut-wrenching, and horrific way. I love the main character in this book, Jade, so much. She is someone who will stand with me forever. This is mixed media. It goes between Jade's perspective, but then also this essay that she's written to one of her teachers. I found it very informative, but also very wise and entertaining in a lot of different ways, and I did not expect to love it as much as I did. Yeah, and also Kill for Me, Kill for You. This is a thriller that also goes back and forth in time, where we are following these group of women who have been wronged and severely hurt by what they believe is a serial killer, and they're trying to catch him. And they will do anything to catch this guy, while also like banding together to form a pack to get revenge, basically. And I'll leave it there. I also did not expect to love this book as much as I did. I thought it was just going to be another thriller that I would just read for entertainment, but this book stuck with me for a lot of reasons. One of those is the plot twist. I did not see the plot twist coming. I will say it's very graphic and very violent, so be ready for that, but such a good book. Such a good book. Obviously, it made it on my favorites list. The next book is one that I actually ended up taking off my list by the end of the year, but because it was on my list throughout the year, I wanted to hold it up and then also tell you guys why it made it off my list. But that is The Wishing Game. This is still a new favorite, but in comparison to all the other books, it just didn't hold up as much by the end of the year. This is a very thought-provoking story about poverty, magic, hope, desire. This book made me cry, which very few books can make me cry. There is so much heart and character in the story, and now that I'm reflecting on it, I'm like, oh, does it still belong on my new favorites list? I don't know. I loved this book so much. The writing is really good. There's a wonderful cast of characters, and there's so much hope in this book. And right now, a lot of us need some hope because of some things going on, a lot of things going on in the world. And if you need a little bit of hope that's going to help you believe in humanity again, The Wishing Game is definitely a book to pick up. It's about characters who are fighting for a chance. I think they're fighting for a chance to win some money, or like they're getting, yeah, it's a combination of like they're getting a copy of this author's book, which will be worth a lot of money. It's really good. It also takes place on an island, which is interesting, but this is not a thriller. It is kind of like a game story though. They are competing in a game, so that was interesting. A Hill That I Will Die On is Murder Road by Simone St. James. This is the Evernight edition that I bought from a friend who very kindly sold it to me for the price of the box and not an oversell. But I love this book so much, and I really, really love the way they did this special edition. This is Simone St. James's next horror thriller. She more so writes horror thriller now, paranormal horror thriller, whereas in the past she's written a lot of like historical horror thriller. But this is about a couple who are on their honeymoon and they end up being suspects in a murder, and so they actually aren't allowed to leave the town and are very motivated to help solve this murder because they are suspects in the case. And it all takes place about this one road where people keep dying and disappearing, and so it's about this new couple trying to figure out what happened in order to free their own name. This is narrated by Brittany Presley, who is one of my favorite narrators. I'll talk about another favorite narrator here in just a minute, but highly recommend the audio for this because I absolutely love Brittany Presley. Also, people felt very disappointed by this book. I'm not quite sure why. I found it to be, I mean, maybe I just stan Simone St. James, but I found the characters to be interesting. I found the murder mystery to be interesting. I think people maybe sometimes think it's going to be more horror, but it is a lot of thriller. And I do remember some people felt let down by the ending, but because I loved the main character so much, I really felt like the ending made sense. So if you haven't read this yet, I would definitely recommend at least giving it a try. I'm noticing, looking at my list next to me, that the Murder Road, which I just told you guys about, and the next two are some of the most hated books of the year. Well, I guess disappointments of people. But another hill that I will die on is An Education in Malice. I actually think that this book is better than A Dowry of Blood, but I think it's because this one combines a lot more things that I personally find interesting or relatable. This is a dark academia retelling of Camellia, which you do not have to read, but I would recommend it. That is also a good book. You don't have to read it by any means to read this, though. This takes place on a college campus, and it's about these two women who get involved in a very complicated relationship with their professor. I do understand some of the complaints there, but I would recommend reading the book before you make a judgment about how you're going to feel about that. This is a sapphic story. It's about, vampires, dark academia. I felt like what stood out to me about An Education in Malice that maybe some people missed is coming into queerness and coming into your sexuality, how confusing but how awakening that feels for some people. And I felt like S.T. Gibson did that justice. I also really love the dark academia setting. I found this book to be very satisfying, and I understand that a lot of people didn't like it, but I loved it. Another hill that I will die on is Midnight on Beacon Street. This is a very short horror thriller. I do understand that people felt like this wasn't as thrilling as they thought it was going to be. This is basically the story about a house break-in. It's a nostalgic story that carries from a lot of popular 90s and early 2000s horror movies, namely Halloween. And there's a scene in here that was directly taken from Halloween and commented on. I actually reached out to the author because I feel like the anxiety that this book provokes and talks about is one that hit very close to home, like almost in an uncanny way. I actually ended up emailing the author, and she emailed me back and was very kind. And so I feel like if you want to know about me, more about me as a human, then I would recommend this book. I mean, I don't know how else to get people to read it, but also I understand why, not that you guys are going to read books because of me, but you're watching this video, and I thought, if you want to understand why I love this book so much and want to understand more about me, this book talks about some of the anxieties because of things that I've experienced in my life. Actually, a house break-in, I'll just say that. Because of that, this book really struck a nerve for me in ways that I understand that people who might not share that same experience might feel let down by. But I just can't not put this book on this list because it meant so much to me, and the author was so kind when I reached out to her. So, all right, what's next? One Perfect Couple. This book is narrated by Imogen Church, who narrates all of Ruth Ware's books, who I love. Imogen Church and Brittany Presley are by far my favorite narrators. I find that they really bring stories to life. This is another island story where these characters are stuck on an island, playing a game similar to Survival that goes deadly. I find Ruth Ware, she's by far one of my favorite authors. I feel like she takes time developing characters and plot. I feel like she ties things together in very interesting ways, but also very dramatic in a way that I feel like sticks with me, but doesn't feel over dramatized. I just can't say enough things good about Ruth Ware and her stories. And then something that you all who have watched my channel before know is I love island survival stories. The survival aspects in this I found to be really entertaining and drive the story forward. I really liked the characters. Such a good book. Again, would highly recommend on audio. Okay, another book that I read this year that was on my new favorites list is Belladonna. I don't have a physical copy of this book right now, but I actually read the first and the second one. But I put Belladonna on this list because it's a really good YA romantasy. It's a gothic story about death, and it's also a murder mystery. It's really good. I actually ended up taking it off my new favorites list to replace it with a different YA romantasy that I felt like I liked just a little bit better. I mean, it's a very close call. There are scenes in Belladonna that will stick with me forever. I highly recommend Belladonna if you haven't read it and you like romantasy or you like YA fantasy romantasy. I highly, highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. Just the book that I'm going to talk about at the end of this video, very narrowly, I liked more than Belladonna. Okay, another book that I don't have a copy of is You Better Watch Out. This is a horror novella that I've talked a lot about recently, and I'm going to continue to talk about through the rest of the year for some other videos that I have coming out. This is a Christmas horror novella about, it's basically like Saw. These people wake up in a town, a deserted town, and they have to escape it, and there's a bunch of like horror games. I found the ending to be very shocking, very thrilling. I loved the writing. The Christmas elements you would think would be cringy, but they actually are written in a way that adds to the horror. I cannot say enough good things about this book. Also recommend on audio. Really, really loved it. If you haven't checked it out yet and you're watching this video as it comes out, end of the year is a perfect time to give this book a shot. The next book on this list is Spells for Forgetting, which I actually read for a video that has not come out yet and might not actually make it out. Spells for Forgetting is a book that I also had on my to read before the end of 2024 list. This is a magical realism murder mystery story about this. Sorry, there was a dog whining, I guess. Maybe one of my neighbor's dogs. Looking for my phone because I think my wife would call me if something was wrong with one of my dogs. Anyway, she definitely would, but I don't know where my phone is. Maybe she would yell for me if something happened. Maybe it was just my neighbor's dog barking. Anywho, thanks for helping me solve that mystery. Speaking of mysteries, yeah, this takes place on an island as well. Wow, I'm realizing more and more what a trend that is for me. But it's about this girl who has left the island and she comes back. It's about a guy who has left the island and he comes back to bury his mother's ashes. And he's faced with a lot of things from the past. He's been accused of a lot of really horrible things, but his true love, his first true love, lives on the island still, and they come back into contact, so there's some romance, but it's very complicated romance. There's a lot of historical elements as far as like what's went on between them and in the island. There's a lot of really interesting like magical realism and witchy vibes. This book is just really good. I ended up taking it off my new favorites list, not because it's not a new favorite. I just felt like it didn't hold up to the same caliber that the rest of these did. And so I still highly recommend it. And it was really good. Also narrated by Brittany Presley. Would also recommend the audio. Man, the ones that I took off were just like narrowly, and maybe I felt just like I should make the list stand out even more. But the ones that I took off were still at least 5 stars and very, very good books that stood out to me throughout the year. All right. Next up on my list is Guillotine, which I don't have a physical copy of, but it is a thriller horror novella that's very bloody. There's a lot of murdering and a lot of killing scenes in this book that are very interesting and unique. This is about a girl who goes to an island. Wow. Basically, I just read books on islands this year. And she's going with this guy that she recently started dating because his mom is someone that she's trying to get close to for clout, basically, and to move up further in the fashion industry. When she gets to this island, she has to sign like an NDA, like she can't talk about anything that happens, and she's just going there with this guy for their like family dinner, and then things go horribly wrong. She finds out that the family's into some really bad and horrific things, and it goes from there. But you should definitely give it a shot. It's a good book. Okay, next up is We Solve Murders. Also very good on audio, would highly recommend. This is by the author of the Thursday Murder Club. I actually ended up liking this a lot more than Thursday Murder Club. What I love about this book is it combines older folks, younger folks, and everybody in between that are trying to survive. I'll leave it at that. And they're also trying to figure out why these famous content creators have been murdered. What I really loved about this was the banter and the dynamic between the characters. Amazing. Also very heartfelt. Grief is very strong throughout this book. I found it to be funny, witty, heartwarming, and a really good sense of found family, while also writing a very interesting mystery. The pacing is excellent. It keeps you going throughout the whole book. I never wanted to put it down. Really, really loved this book a lot. Let's see. Assistant to the Villain. I'm just trying to speed up just a little bit because I feel my voice very much waning. Assistant to the Villain is a romantasy that I read that I thought I was going to hate read and that I was just going to complain about the whole time, and it ended up being on my new favorites list. This is very much in the vein of The Princess Bride. I found the characters to be very lovely, but they are both loving and lovey, if that's even a word. I found them to be really well written. This book is hilarious. Also has a very interesting and whimsical atmosphere, like very fantastical. It is a story of good versus evil, literally. And then also what I will say is if you start this book and you find it cringy, the author is trying to, I think at times, very gently make fun of some romance tropes, but I think she does it in a very quirky and interesting way. I also read this book at a time where I was struggling a lot emotionally, and so it had to go on this list for that reason. I really love these characters, and I can't wait to read the follow-up. That will definitely be happening in 2025. Okay. I also read a backlist book this year, The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. This book is about these three women who all find out that they're dating the same man. I loved this book. I thought based on the premise of cheating and things like that, I didn't understand why everyone had loved this book, but Beth O'Leary never lets me down. She always writes very interesting, well-described, heartfelt characters. I love her romance. Like, you can really feel the love in them. They're not insta-lovey. They're not cringy for my taste. They're not super smutty. This is more of like what we call romance plus, where there's a lot more in the story than just the romance. You really get to know the three women, and the ending is gut-wrenching. I will just leave that there. If you've read it, you know. Slow Dance. I've talked about this book all year since I read it. Another phenomenal romance story. It's a second chance romance story, but it's very realistic, and I felt like I could relate with both of the main characters. I don't really know what to say about this book except for it truly comes from the heart. It's very realistic, very humanizing. The main female character shares a lot of her insecurities outwardly and openly. And because of that, I found it very relatable. Yeah, second chance romance, a really, really, really good book. A lot of really heavy themes throughout it, just like in The No-Show, but yeah, I just really love these main characters. This is a book I'll never forget. I found it very hard-hitting, but also very enjoyable. And I found the writing amazing. I loved that book so much. I also read Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is a book, I don't even know how to describe Normal People, about these two people who are basically faced with will they, won't they, throughout their life. They come from very different backgrounds. They date on and off throughout life, and you're basically reading to find out if they're going to make it in a relationship or not. I also found it to be very realistic, very relatable. Sally Rooney can be really on the nose with her prose at times, but I found her to write about the parts of humanity that were usually too embarrassed to talk about. I found that really refreshing, and I really enjoyed it. Oh, and apparently I ended up also taking that off of my new favorites list, and I think the reason for that is comparing it to these two. I prefer these two, but I did still really love Sally Rooney. So I ended up taking 1, 2, 3, 4 off this list, which were The Wishing Game, Belladonna, Spells for Forgetting, and Normal People. All because there was something comparable to those on the list that I enjoyed more. Okay, let's keep going. We have just a few more left. Another hill that I will die on that I really enjoyed was Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay, which is all crinkly at the top, but that's okay. This book's a little crinkly. This is a story about a group of teenagers that filmed this movie that has a cult following, but not many people know about, which was a big trend this year. I found this to be a really interesting character study, and that's what I really loved about it, not necessarily the horror elements. There are some horrific elements to this book for sure, but I think people are valid in not liking it. Something that I really loved it. I just felt like it was a really interesting character study. I really enjoyed reading about the characters, and yeah, it's pretty horrific and heartbreaking at times. I've never really read anything like it, and I think that's also another reason I loved it so much. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Okay, just two more. Belladonna ended up getting replaced by The Dagger in the Flame, which is a romantasy, YA romantasy, about these people who live in a society where they are these warring factions basically that use this magic based on shade, which is, if you've read the Jade City series, it's similar to that. This book also reminded me of These Violent Delights. But basically these two new adults, because I think they're like 19 or 20, are in warring factions, and they basically are trying to kill each other. And I'm making it sound really bad, but there's a lot of really interesting world building that's very easy to understand. I felt like the writing was spectacular. The banter, some of my favorite banter, like even just thinking about it, I want to read the book again because it was so good. There's a lot of good quotes. Both of the characters are very well developed. It's a slow burn. You're rooting for both of them at the same time. I loved it. I found the world building to be interesting, the characters to be interesting, the banter to be very good. I really don't have anything bad to say about it. I found it very easy to read, but not too easy that I was bored. I really, really enjoyed The Dagger and the Flame, especially the banter. Okay, the last book, the one that got added to this list, that when I previously reviewed it, I gave it 5 stars, but I actually think it should be on my new favorites list, is The Hitchcock Hotel. This is about a guy who was a big Hitchcock fan, and he and a bunch of his classmates end up on this island at this reclusive mansion where they are staying. They're all brought there for a reason, and then they start dropping off, basically, and then it goes back and forth from the past to the present. The past shows up strong in this novel. It builds them from high school or college. I think they were in a college film class together, and into the present. So we get like their lives and then what's happened since, and why they're all on this, why they're basically all on this island. I think it's on an island. I know it's at least in a mansion that's far away from everything, but I think it's also on an island. I'm not sure. Can't quite remember. I do need to get a physical copy of this book as well because I loved it so much. I just, again, really loved the characters. I found the mystery to be very satisfying. But what stood out to me was the characters, it being like a slow burn character study. It's not the most thrilling, but I found it very interesting, which is something that you can see throughout all of the books that I've read that I really love this year, is character. Kind of slow paced, but also very satisfying conclusions and endings. So a video that I'm going to be doing after I do my top 10 video is comparing my favorites, like my top 10 list of 2024 to my top 10 list of 2023. And I'm going to battle them out and see which ones I had the most, like which ones are, like if 2023 or 2024 favorites were better. And I can't wait to show you guys that video. My voice, if you can't hear, is at its end. So I am going to end this video and go take some more medicine and some more cough drops. But I hope you guys enjoyed getting to know me a little bit more as a reader. These are all of my favorite books of 2024. I hope that there's something that you will give a try, whether you like it or not. Like after you read it, that's totally okay with me. I just think that these are worth at least giving a shot. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much for being part of my community. If you would like to spend more time with the community, my Discord is linked down below. It's free. Everyone can join. And there are lots of people that are very active in it. So if you would like another place to go to spend time with other book lovers, feel free to check out the Discord. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.